gave them to him and he left.
That's correct.
Did you have any other communication with Chief Pop about the Slavin investigation or about Commander Minor's role in that investigation until you interviewed him in the minor IA?
We talk a lot, so I can't be perfectly clear on that. There may have been, but there's nothing that jumps to my memory.
Between the conclusion of the Slavin investigation and the start of the minor investigation, did Assistant Chief Slavin ever approach you in any way to discuss either Commander Minor's conduct in that investigation or the report or the findings?
I don't remember anything like that.
Was Assistant Chief Slavin at all part of your chain of command for either of those investigations?
Slavin was our chain of command he was the ISB bureau chief at that time. But
I'm sorry?
we weren't supposed to talk to him about it. Obviously, with him, we went directly to the big chief. And then, we went directly to the big chief with Commander Minors.
All right, I'd like to talk now. Do you have a recollection of being told to open an investigation of Commander Minor?
Yes.
Can you describe what that conversation was for us, please?
I'm going to have to refer to my report. Referring to the report, it's very basic, but it says that, in summary, Chief Rob Bell said that we're going to be investigating Commander Minor for an integrity violation and that he would be suspended pending the outcome of that investigation.
Did Chief Rod Bell suggest to you what the outcome of that investigation should be?
No.
Did he give any indication, subtly or otherwise, what that outcome should be?
No.
Sorry, bear with me. I'm trying to see what I can skip. What material were you given when you started the investigation into Commander Minor?
I don't think I was given anything. It may have been the transcript from the case, but we already had that.
And how did you determine what your investigation should be?
I went back and reviewed the transcripts and compared them to what he said, to what I knew that Lieutenant Bonnet had said, and that gave me a track to investigate.
How did you determine who else you should interview in that investigation besides Commander Minor?
Well, at first I thought it was only going to be Commander Minor, but during my interview with Commander Minor, he said that he had spoken to Chief Pop during the Slavin investigation, which we weren't aware of, so I ended up interviewing Chief Pop.
Were you surprised at any of the material that Chief Pop shared with you in his interview?
I was surprised that Commander Minor had called him when he was away, and that he had told Chief Pop that they were appalled and offended. Because that certainly didn't seem to be the tenor when I interviewed Commander Minor in the Slave investigation.
Frank, here in my notes, I had intended to ask you about the conclusions that you came to and the bases therefore, but I understand that the board does not want us to go over things that are in the record.
It's in the record, but you're going to give a closing argument to really highlight particular things.
Okay.
I mean, that's why we're here. Vice Chair spoke when you read his conclusions. We'll have them, and we've got them in the record. That's why unless appellant's counsel thinks it won't be read. I mean, he's just going to read them anyway, correct?
Well, I intended to ask if, for his thought process, or if there was anything that he felt was ambiguous about it, but, you know, I think the conclusions do.
So now, do you think he needs to answer those questions? I'm not sure how that's relevant.
I don't know what he would say. I mean, I agree with you that if he's going to read the report, I think that's a waste of everybody's time. If he has additional context that he wants to offer here, I think that it's fair for her to ask. I certainly am going to have a lot of questions.
Let me get some context and then go ahead.
Okay. Well, Sergeant Lewis, have you read the report that was prepared by Commander Miner's witness that he is presenting as an expert witness, former Lieutenant Powell Foley?
Yes,
And you're aware that she criticized a number of things in your report.
yes.
One of the criticisms that Ms. Powell Foley leveled had to do with respect to Commander Miner's report, was about the order that the interviews appeared in the report.
Correct.
In your mind, is that a valid criticism?
No,
Okay, why is that?
for a couple of reasons. One is, the policy says that I can determine the order of the interview. In this case, I was trying to accommodate the schedule of Commander Minor and Chief Slayton.
Okay. Some of the issues in this case involve your subjective beliefs or your understanding of the situation based on what Commander Minor told you in the first interview, and then what you later learned in subsequent interviews. Some of that includes the fact that you did not know or did not understand that Commander Minor himself had a subjective offense that he could take into account. When you interview a witness as a professional investigator, it's part of the evidence you consider the tone, the inflection, the demeanor of the witness who is testifying.
Most certainly.
And did you make observations about Commander Miner's tone and inflection and demeanor during his two separate interviews with you?
Yes,
Okay. Evidence?
I did.
And how many times in your professional judgment did Commander Miner engage in that conduct?
52 times.
Sorry, how many?
52.
Thank you.
There has been some discussion about your question to Commander Miner about directly offended. Are you generally familiar with the critique of your question?
Yes, I am.
What is your response to that critique?
The phrase, or you, or do you know anyone else is directly offended, or just the words directly offended, is broad enough, general enough for everyone to understand what I'm asking. And certainly, anyone could understand that what I'm asking is, what was said, did it affect you, were you offended directly? It's not a two-part answer where both have to be present to make it directly offended.
I'd like to refer just quickly to the transcript from Commander Miner's first interview.
Is that from the Slavin investigation?
Yes.
What page? It's Exhibit 3.
I think it is separately included at base number page from City Exhibit 2 is COS minor 2356. And that's City Exhibit 2, which contains all of Commander Minor's submissions from the Slavin investigation. The exchange appears at the bottom of the page.
I have it. That's what 2356, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sergeant Lewis, are you oriented to the transcript of the IA investigation interview with Commander Minor? Have that in front of you?
Is it 2256?
There are duplicates, so it might be. What I'm referring to is Commander Minor's first interview with you, page 3 of 5.
Page 3 of 5, okay.
The transcript speaks for itself, but paraphrasing, you asked Commander Minor if he knew anyone who was directly offended by what Assistant Chief Slavin had said. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I want to make sure I'm on the proper transcript. This one says COS minor 002239. Is that correct? It says page 3 of 5.
There are duplicates, so that might be, if you hold it up, I can't approach you. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I'm sorry, it's hard to hear for some reason. So,
I think the fan just came on. I'll try to speak up. What was your intention in asking Commander Minor if he knew of anyone directly offended?
I was trying to find the victim. I was trying to find someone who was offended to help them. We do help people in IA when they're not, and I wanted to get to that person as soon as possible.
Did you later
I'm sorry,
learn?
did I want to make sure I understand that. You wanted to help the person who may have been directly offended?
Yes,
This was 7 or 8 weeks after the fact, correct?
correct.
Okay. And you thought there was someone who,
That whole time?
Yes,
And do you have an understanding of whether your interview with Lieutenant Bonnet eased that worry for him?
I think it did. I said that it's not tolerated and for him to inform Commander Minor or HR. I may have said HR or IA, but I said let us know if that happened.
And my recollection, and the transcript will speak for itself, is that you actually told Lieutenant Bonnet, you encouraged him to contact you if anyone ever tried to retaliate against him.
Yes, because that would be an investigation.
And do you have the authority to open that investigation if someone comes to you for that?
If I don't have the, most certainly to start it and get it going, and if I'm not able to get a hold of one of the chiefs, we're gonna do something like that.
Has Lieutenant Bonnet ever, since this happened, come to you with any kind of complaint or worry to do with retaliation?
No,
Either for his participation in the Slavin investigation or for the Minor investigation? Have you heard any complaint at any time from Lieutenant Bonnet?
to me directly, no.
Are you aware of whether he ever approached your internal affairs partner, Sergeant Golahar?
No, I'm sure I would know about that. Did not hear anything about that.
When you asked Commander Minor in his first interview if he knew anyone directly offended, were you intending to ask the question broadly or specifically?
Well, It was both, because I don't know what discussions are going on inside of that room or after the room. So if, and I would have expected to elicit some sort of information about how Commander Minor felt, how other people felt, if he had discussions with them. And if they're upset, if they, just the whole picture, because I'm still trying to find facts, there's basic fact finding at that point.
In your professional opinion, would a reasonable internal affairs investigator or former investigator understand that something significant enough to elevate up their chain of command is something that should also be given to internal affairs when the opportunity arises for that interview?
Oh, yes, most certainly.
Can you read for us just the answer that Commander Minor gave you when you asked him if he knew of anyone directly offended?
So that would be page 4 of 5 on the transcript. And Commander Minor said, I don't know specifically. It was definitely uncomfortable, laughish during, after, I guess, during and after the jokes, if you will.
Does that answer continue?
Yes, I said, okay, and then he said, I know what he told me, that someone had told one of those other lieutenants, and I interjected, okay. That was kind of how it got to where it is. I said, okay. And he said, but I know, but I don't know. And then I said, okay, I'm just looking, I'm gonna talk to everybody there. I'm just trying to, didn't know if there was someone who you knew for sure was directly offended by it.
Before Commander Minor gave you that answer, had you shared with him that you intended to speak with everyone there?
I think, no, not up to that point.
You're aware that later on in your communications with Commander Minor, he claims to have understood directly offended to mean targeted and offended, and that he withheld the information regarding Lieutenant Bonnet because he did not fit that category.
Right, both had to be present, both
Okay.
targeted and offended.
But Commander Minor talked about an uncomfortable laugh. Was that an uncomfortable laugh from himself or from someone directly targeted? Or did you take that to mean that the other attendees in the meeting uncomfortably laughed?
Yeah, that was the other attendees at the meeting, and that was the tone of it.
Okay. Lieutenant Bonnet was at that meeting. Did Lieutenant Bonnet tell you that he laughed?
No,
Commander Minor also says that directly offended, no one met that category, but his answer also discusses other lieutenants. Do you see that?
Council, I'm thinking this could be considered a closing argument since it's the document that exists. You don't even have to say, remember Sergeant Lewis said thus and so. You can say, see, he said, Commander Minor said this.
I'll withdraw the question. Sergeant Lewis, had anyone ever suggested to you that Commander Minor believed or felt or understood Chief Slavin's comments to be the equivalent of using the N-word?
during his investigation, the second investigation, I think he did in his written statement. I'd have to go back and look. I know Lieutenant Bonnet did.
In the end, you sustained integrity findings against Commander Minor, is that right?
Yes, I did.
And your report speaks for itself on that regard.
It does.
Now that you've had the chance to review the report, to talk to us in this hearing, to review the criticisms leveled at your investigation by the former Lieutenant Powell Foley, Do you have any doubts about the conclusions that you reached and your professional judgment as an internal affairs investigator?
Absolutely not.
And why is that?
Because I went where the facts led me. I listened to Commander Minor. I trusted what he told me. And it was entirely different, almost entirely different from the way he presented himself with Sladen's case. And the fact that his direct report described all these feelings and all these issues to him, and they made a plan together, and they talked, and by the time, and none of that was in there. He never told me that he talked to Chief Hoff. He never told me that Lieutenant Bonnet was upset. He didn't tell me that he spoke to multiple people in between, all these people that were potential witnesses. I didn't know any of that information. So when we got to his, it was a big surprise when we got to his investigation, he gave me that information. So based on that, I think my finding is reasonable.
Approximately how many cases have you investigated as internal affairs investigator?
Personally, about 45.
Do you have any idea ballpark of how often you sustain versus how often you do not sustain an allegation of wrongdoing?
I'm sorry, I don't